All right, so for those of you who are joining us, welcome to the Oracle In podcast. My name is Eric. I'm joined by Laquan and Kevin, and we're going to get into our third segment today, which is looking at the value of space exploration. So last week we talked about a recently discovered solar system that is about 41 light years away from our solar system, and apparently they have found a couple planets that resemble Earth-like qualities. And part of this discussion, I think, is getting into what is the value of that? Why do we have to pour taxpayer money into this? Why does it create jobs? Why does it, play such an important role in school?
So first, I think it was NASA put out, hey, what should we name these planets? Do yourself a favor and go look up some of the responses on Twitter. But I think one of the things we were talking about, so there is this idea, right, of what is our place in the universe. And there's only so much you can get from terrestrial land. There's only so much you can get from telescopes and that sort of thing. You have to kind of look beyond to really start to say, okay, I know that from an educational standpoint, I understand how physics and everything work on this planet. Are those universal? Can we go look at other stars, other planets? Does this hold? Do we actually understand the fundamentals of mathematics and physics and time and all this when you actually move beyond this, third rock from the sun?
Yeah.
Plus, rockets.
I think it's vital. For me as a kid growing up, that was actually one of my passions. In middle school, late elementary and all through middle school, I would ask my mom, hey, can you get me a telescope? I would buy, I'd get a telescope for Christmas, like a really nice telescope. I always wanted to know that, there's something else out there. Even to this day, here I am at 35, I just know there's more out there, right? And there's just no way in the world that we're the only planet in this whole universe that inhabits life. It just doesn't make any sense to me. So maybe they're holding some information. I don't know, whatever. But anyway, I'm not going to go down that road. But I'm just trying to say, I think that's the value of space exploration and stuff like that, is because I know there's more out there. This just can't be the only planet that inhabits life forms. And so, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for anybody out there that might be debating that in your head, I would just like to, keep in mind that what we can directly observe through telescopes rather easily are stars. And in the Milky Way galaxy, do you guys know how many stars we have?
Couple trillion?
Not quite that many.
No, it's a trillion. I know these things.
I
don't need your facts.
Not one of the alternative facts out there.
So in our
100 billion?
In our galaxy, it's anywhere from 100 to 400 billion stars. Yeah. And the reason why that has such a large range in there is because if you think about our solar system being a flat disk, if we're on one little part kind of on the outside, it's really hard to see what's on the other side. And, even though we have technology that's, gaining in innovation, it's still challenging. But the point is, we have about 100 to 400 billion stars in our galaxy alone, and what we have mapped of the observable sky is about 400 million other galaxies. So when you do the math on that and you see how many stars are out there, and then the chances of those stars having solar systems and the chances of those planets being in the habitable zone and having a chemistry that can mix well to create organic compounds, now you start to get into the potential for life. So,
it's in the millions, if not higher, as far as potential habitable planets. So,
it's got to be larger than that.
Millions, trillion. I don't know. It's a big number.
Think about it like for every star, if you have anywhere from 4 to 10 planets.
Well, and some stars don't have planets, but when you look at it, it's almost mathematically certain that there's at least a microbe somewhere else.
Right.
And that's all, okay. So I like to think that there are little green men and all that kind of thing. I'm not going to go down the conspiracy theory that they visited us, but I think that we're not unique and that there is advanced life. But what I think you're hearing from a lot of the science is we think that the building blocks for life are common enough, and that this specific thing that is the Earth, the Petri dish, is common enough that it should have happened at least somewhere else.
You ever heard of the Miller-Urey experiment?
Don't
cheat.
I have not.
I love Kevin's like, give me a second. I know.
So Wikipedia says that it's a chemical experiment that simulated the conditions thought to be present at the time of early Earth and tested the chemical origin of life under those conditions.
So basically what Miller-Urey did, what year was that? Was that 1953?
52.
What he basically did in a laboratory is that he said, okay, if we think about where the Earth was in the beginning of life and we try to reset the clock on the Earth to where all the chemical elements would have been trapped underground, our atmosphere would have been very different. He said, okay, well, I want to be in a laboratory with these glass tubular looking things, and I want to set up those conditions where you have things like ammonia, you have carbon dioxide, and things that would have been in our atmosphere. And he said, I'm going to hold these together in an environment that would also be the temperature of the Earth at that time. And I want to see what happens. I want to see if chemical bonds start to become unwound, and then they start to find new bonds, and then what would that wind up creating? And what he discovered is that in his experiment, he successfully had trials where he had the beginnings of organic compounds. If on a molecular level, you look at what makes something organic, what gives something those qualities, that naturally happen. It was, I think, later in the 90s or in the early 2000s, somebody wanted to challenge that and say, like, well, you probably weren't accurate because of the technology back in the 50s. So let's re-update this experiment to what we now know about the Earth and carbon dating and all of that stuff, and fix the variables and see if it does the same thing. And sure enough, they had successful trials of that as well. So if you do have the right chemical ingredients, the right temperatures, you can have something grow from it.
Yeah, there was 5 that in 1952, and then this has a volcanic spark discharge experiment using the same base premise, and I don't know, 20 things. And then that was in 2008. 2010, they did it again, which H2S rich spark discharge experiment, and it's they got everything. I mean, these are all fancy words that simple country folk like me don't understand, but the base blocks for life is what we're seeing. And yeah, I mean, it's right there. That alone tells you, hey, let's go look for that. Since we think this is how it worked, can we go find that?
So what's the value of that, though? I mean, when we really think about, we've talked a lot about it this last election because we're focusing so much on human beings and having jobs and people getting their livelihoods and having security. What is the value of that? How does that overall help us in the long run?
Well, it gives us ammunition to tell the creationists to shut up, which is always good. But I think what it does at its core is it helps us understand the complexity of life, to really look and analyze, like, are we special? Is this common? Is this not common? Are we, who are we in this great big universe? And you cannot get that without getting to as close to an understanding of the entire makeup as possible, right? You can't, otherwise you're just saying, well, this guy over here said that it's because, this God created everything. And you're like, yeah, but there might be more to it. We need to know more.
Q, what do you think? He was checked out. He was texting. He doesn't even know that his mic is muted. He was checked out. Your mic is muted.
No, I wasn't checked out. I was actually doing some research on space exploration. So, and that's what we're talking about, right? Space exploration, right? Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, it's a lot of things, like even like going out to the other planets and stuff like that. But even for our own planet, just still learning more about our own atmosphere, and being able to predict with more certainty, maybe natural disasters or weather patterns and stuff like that, based off that stuff, advancing our own technology. Those are the things that I think about. And also, I feel like the carrying capacity of this Earth is will be reached soon. You know, so at some point we need to figure out what the hell is our plan B, because Earth is plan A. We don't have a plan B right now, and the way we're mowing through resources and destroying this planet right now, we might want to get to trying to figure out if there's other inhabitable places for this growing population. So I think that's what's important about space exploration too. Creates new jobs. There's a lot of things, to it. And I think it's very important. And also just the wonderment, right? Just like thinking like, man, when you look in the sky at night, when I used to live in Alaska, the Northern Lights, of course, it's just light off the glacier stuff. But you just look, you're like, man, I wonder what's out there, It's just those little things as a kid. You look at, you're like, man, I wonder what's out there. Not really about, is there aliens coming out here, but what's out there? Because you take the religious element out of this, you just can't tell me there's no other planet that don't have something on it. It just doesn't make any sense. We are not unique. We're unique to this planet, but we are not unique to the universe. I'm pretty sure there's some other people out there with higher power telescopes from other planets being like, look at these mofos over there, thinking they special. But seriously, on a serious note, like, dude, for real.
I mean, when you look at it, Ancient Aliens is popular for a reason, because it taps into that piece, which, so if someone ever is one of your friends that's telling you it's all true, there's on YouTube, Ancient Aliens Debunked. It's like a 3-hour YouTube thing. You're like, yeah, guys, listen to these guys, because they just ripped apart every argument you guys put forward. But having that show, it shows that people are, when they look up at the stars, there's questions. What is out there? Something is out there. And when they look down at the Earth, they're like, is this it? Are there things that are mysterious in the past? And could it be that there's a better explanation than the ones we're hearing now? And just that sense of wonder alone, I think, is hugely valuable, because you get people thinking outside the box.
Well, one thing that I think has actually helped us in terms of making our environments cleaner, and this is what I think is so troubling about what a lot of Republicans are trying to do, which just doesn't make sense to me on a very basic human responsible level. And that's that with space exploration, we've also been able to compare and contrast our planet more firmly against others. So there's a lot more that we can learn as far as, wow, these conditions really are kind of rare, or at least the next possible one that's closest to us is what did we say it was? 41 light years in terms of miles, was like
170,000 years as fast as we can go.
Miles away. Yeah, it's a really long ways away. But what I really appreciate about this is that if you think about the importance of NASA and how our federal tax dollars go to pay for NASA, NASA, as of 2011, had a budget of $18 billion. Now, here's what's important about this. $18 billion is a lot of money that goes to a lot of different projects. We have telescopes all over the world. We have spacecrafts. We have the International Space Station. So there's a lot of things that those billions of dollars go to. But if we think about it in terms of the whole entire federal budget, that's half of 1%. So we take a very small amount of our budget to do some of the most explorative human endeavors ever known to our species and life on this planet. One thing that I wanted to bring up here, and this is on Wikipedia, so if anybody wants to challenge its validation, by all means, shoot yourself out there. So this right here is the budget from 1958. And what's interesting about this is that what you can see, make that lighter there. What you can see is that if we think about, in terms of actual dollar amount and then percentage of the federal budget, it's fluctuated. But during the 60s, you're getting up to 3-4%, which is, it's getting significantly larger in terms of proportion. And then it starts to go back down again. And then it starts to go a little bit back up. And then it comes back down. And now we're at one of the lower times that we've ever budgeted out for NASA in our country's history. And yet this new administration is talking about making cuts to NASA. Like, that's where we need to be focusing these cuts on.
NASA and PBS.
Yeah, exactly. These are very, very, and that's the thing, is that they grab headlines, but it's not actually impacting our debt or our deficit at all.
Well, the thing that I find incredibly funny. Okay, so I wanted to point out for anyone that doesn't really understand why it went up in the 60s, that's when, JFK basically was like, dude, we're going to the moon in 10 years. And there was a space race between us and Russia. Russia got to space first with Sputnik, but we got to the moon first in 69. So that's why that money spiked as high as it did. And then in the 80s, there was definitely a resurgence of space exploration. You had Halley's Comet, which was, that kind of anything like that really gets the juices flowing.
Right.
But yeah, it's I don't know. I think it's funny that people are going to complain about how much money NASA spends on their cell phone. Because the technology that we've gotten from NASA, okay, Tang alone, right, is worth 18 billion a year. Maybe not, but the number of things that they do that have come out of, like, the technology that comes out of the space race and the space, it's huge. It's huge.
That is huge.
Yeah, there's a lot. And so just to kind of piggyback off Kevin, like, I was just kind of doing some research, and so they were saying like a couple things that we've that we have from space exploration, which is the cell phone camera, clean energy technology, scratch resistant lenses, water filtration and purification, and CAT scans. Think about that. Think about all those things I just mentioned, and those are very important things that we use on a day-to-day basis. Think about, every phone now is like, oh, this great camera on your cell phone. Look where that came from.
Well, look about it even in terms of defense.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine when Google Earth went live and countries out there that had no idea that that's a consumer product that's for free? I can look at your house if you live somewhere in Africa. You know what I mean? Like, that's powerful to put people under that level of surveillance and then to let them know that. So I think it's interesting that, the way that I kind of see this is that what I think is happening is that we are seeing that this new administration wants to devalue space exploration and say, oh, it's not needed. We don't need all of this. Because in my opinion, I think they're going after all of the climate data that's coming back from those satellites. I think they want to hush that up for a while. They want to put coal country back online. They want us to start drilling all over the place, all over again. And it's a last desperate attempt to take the last of our resources. And that's what they're going to fight for.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that assessment. I think that, and it's like we were saying earlier, they're not even trying to hide it. This isn't even a secret anymore. We don't want to spend money on that because there's no value. Climate change is a hoax perpetrated by the Chinese
and in proportion to the rest of the federal budget, that means nothing. Eliminating that budget would do nothing.
Well, what did he say? He wanted to up the defense budget, which none of the defense generals and stuff say is needed. 54 billion.
I think that was the number. Yeah.
So what is that? 3 times their budget that he could that he's wanting to just go blow on tanks that we don't need,
or fighter jets that I'll never see the light of war. So I mean,
yeah, like.
But yeah, I mean, it's all about oil and stuff like that, so I don't know. I mean, again, we think about that 1% that's actually in power right now. It all makes sense. A lot of that money is tied to what you were saying, like the drilling all over the place, Eric, a little while ago. So you got to keep the integrity of that. We cannot afford to be going to any other source at this point in time because all their business is tied to oil. Their business is not tied into renewable energies. So that whole climate change and everything else that Kevin was talking about, yeah, they're going to try to hush that up because it threatens them and their money.
Well, I mean, you look at the head of the EPA is, basically been caught with his hand in the cookie jar of fossil fuels when he was the Attorney General of Oklahoma, I think.
Oklahoma.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. So Oklahoma is now dangerous due to earthquakes caused by fracking.
Well, who's surprised by that?
No, but let that sink in for a second. We have actually started causing earthquakes because we refuse to put up solar panels.
Yeah. I think a lot of people just think, hey, if you dig in the ground, you could dig in the ground. But if you think about the way that the ground is constructed, all you need to do is hit the right tension point and you will break rock, like large plateaus of rock.
what the geologists are saying are these are all dormant or dead faults that are now waking back up because we've lubricated the shit out of them with all the benzene and crazy chemicals that, I mean, they take the chemical waste that is toxic. This is a toxic substance, right? There's people, if they do this near your groundwater and it gets in there, you can light your water on fire. Like this is that. I mean, that's not an exaggeration. They're taking that and just pumping it straight into the ground because they're using it for hydraulic fracturing, and all of a sudden they get to get rid of their toxic waste for free. Well, they get paid to do it because it brings up another product, and it just sits there. Like,
so that's what I'm curious about.
To be fair, though, Hillary Clinton, in all of her stupidity, was also a huge fan of fracking. So we were getting this one way or the other, but it's just insanity that we're seeing fucking Oklahoma is getting hit by earthquakes that get bigger and bigger every year.
So here's a little prophecy of my own I'm going to put out there. If I'm going to be curious to see if this new administration actually takes root and the Republicans maintain this power, which they can do. That is a possibility. If they do that, I'm very curious to see what sort of regulations they're going to start putting on something like Google Earth. Because if people can start to find these things and they see satellite imagery of this, that's another threat that now they'll be looking at it at home of like, well, we don't want people looking at our own backyard, let alone what's going on in Africa.
Yeah, the national security gag tape would be put on. And I mean, to be fair, Google Earth is, depending on when you look at it, it could be years old images that you're looking at.
2012 or something.
Yeah, you're not getting good new data. So what we may see is just fewer and fewer updates.
Mm-hmm.
But and that's what NASA, I was just looking at the other day. It was before and after photos from their satellites. Here's pre-deforestation, here's post-deforestation. And because we have NASA, because we have the satellites, we're able to see this impact. And without that, it's out of sight, out of mind, which we know Americans are really, really good at.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to be going on with the environment. That's a whole other thing, because kind of bringing it back to the topic here, if we're talking about what's the value of space exploration, it's more than just, let's have, kind of a Carl Sagan, Neil deGrasse Tyson kind of moment where it's for entertainment purposes. And it's more for, no, this is actually data that we need because lives are going to be on the line without it.
Well, like I was just talking about Somalia, right? What's the value of space exploration? To be able to study our climate, to understand the impacts so that 110 people don't have to die in 48 hours of hunger related to a drought, which is related to climate change. We can start to get in front of some of this stuff. And if we're not doing it, then we're just, sticking our head in the sand and saying, if I don't see it, it's not happening.
So I want to share this too real quick. When we're talking about, what this stuff looks like, this is a pretty good example. I mean, these are satellites that NASA helps to oversee. And, this is showing what happens in deforestation. I believe this is in the Amazon. And that's what we're noticing, that, you have these farming and ranching operations that are out there, but, give it 10 years and look how much more of the forest is slowly being eaten away. And that's going all over the world.
One of the real scary ones is when you look at freshwater bodies, lakes, big lakes, that sort of thing on the planet. And you look at them over like the last 10, 15 years, and you can just watch the beach get bigger and the water get smaller. So, yeah, I mean, understanding, even if we don't go even to the moon, even if all our exploration is, related to this planet and we just simply go right above the atmosphere to be able to look down, that alone has immense value. And whether we go out like cockroaches into space and go colonize another rock is secondary to being able to understand this rock.
Yeah.
I just wish we could just be honest and just accept the data for what it is. I think there's, the big thing when you think about, we talked about climate change a little while ago, is that it's so disrespectful to the professionals. who spend countless years, hours, blood, sweat, and tears acquiring this data, and put it into a form to disseminate to the people in a way that we can digest it. But yeah, we have the administration people like, oh, that's BS. Like, this is somebody who went to school, and that's their whole life. It's like telling a doctor, nah, man, I don't believe you. Nah, I don't know about that. But so you're going to tell somebody who's a professional, that they don't know what they're talking about, that the data collectively, they're all saying this is all true, but you don't want to believe it. I just wish we can come to a point where we like acknowledge it, be like, okay, cool. What can we do to fix it? I know it's not going to happen, but
yeah, not with the way our country's set up, because, we're so focused on becoming a salesman for the American dream, when the reality is we cannot all live the American dream. There are simply not enough resources for that to happen. So, Kevin, did you want to add something?
No, I think, at the end of the day, what we're talking about, and I think what Q's point really brings up is we have, since the 50s, we've been doing this, right? We have this immense data set that people can pour over and work. And people have, they get a PhD and they go and spend 30, 40 years learning how to look at this planet and all that. And we're just, it's just insane that we're going, well, Jethro, my next door neighbor, he's got an 8th grade education, and he says that you're full of shit, man. And that is what's leading the way now. So when it comes down to what is the value of space exploration and all that, so that Jethro doesn't get to talk very much about space exploration, that we have the data, we have the experiences, we have this knowledge that we can draw on and actually do something with. I mean, just getting out there and doing it, you learn so much more. I mean, think about what we knew in the 50s and what we know now. I mean, to say, oh, well, we don't want to do that anymore, it's insane.
Yeah, I know we're running over, but I just kind of want to say this is real quick. So to Kevin's point too as well, we've been doing it since the 50s, right? And there's been skeptics who have PhDs who have gone over these data sets and can't dispute this information. This information has been updated, the experience been ran over and over and over since the 50s until right now. And it still comes out to the same conclusion since the 50s. So how do you just dismiss, somebody's work, their life's work?
Well, wait, when you say since the 50s, what exactly are you referring to? Because space exploration's been before then.
No. We're talking about climate change and stuff like that as well. You know what I'm saying?
So when you brought up the budget, it went back to the 50s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, like, because with that information that's out there, and like when they talk about it, like everybody around the world, who are in those professions are looking at it, trying to dissect it. But yet the conclusion is still the same. But yet, we still like, it's bullshit. That's just, to me, that's so fucked up. If I was a scientist with a PhD, I'd be like, wow, like really? Like just like that. You just dismiss my work, even though all of it's right here in your face, so, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's part of what we're also waking up to right now, which is that we've left too many people behind with the tribal-like mentality instead of a truly enlightened mentality of infinite knowledge. And I think that's why we have a lot of back work to do. We left a lot of people behind.
Bring on the damn aliens, because nothing is going to unite us. Nothing's going to unite us like an invasion, man.
That's how Trump got here. That same concept.
It's true. All right, guys. Well, we have gone over. So any concluding remarks?
Russia beat us into space.
Yeah, but we'll get the last word, right?
Not in these 4 years.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everybody for watching. We'll be back next week with some new topics. And hope everybody has a good night. Thanks, everyone.